Thank you, Ceann Corla. Taoiseach, reacting to arrests last week arising from the Jobestown protest, you said it's entirely a matter for the Gardai and they're completely independent of the government. So I wanted to ask you to expand your views in light of 7 days now of arrests of residents in Tallaght. Now, obviously, the government are not totally separate from the Gardai, or the judiciary for that matter. They hire and can effectively fire a commissioner, for example. But if in this case the Gardai are making independent decisions about such a huge level of resources to be devoted to a protest and to the water charges generally, wouldn't that be an amazing decision for them to make? Is it not worrying that the Gardai would have that level of power and decision-making with no democratic control of the elected representatives of the people? Now, the Anti-Austerity Alliance Taoiseach doesn't think that there's a paper trail somewhere linking the government with these actions by the Gardai. I think that's highly unlikely. But the point of political policing is this, that the Gardai are operating in a political fashion that is to the benefit of this government. There's, for example, a similarity, Taoiseach, in your views and the Commissioner's views about protests. In November in the Dáil, you said that protesters in Jobestown acted like hounds after a fox, depicting them as wild savages in reality, rather than people livid over 6 years of austerity. And Commissioner O'Sullivan said that some of the protests against water charges were unacceptable in tone and sentiment. Now, Taoiseach, I received a letter from a Garda following my speech. Okay. And I'll just give you a very short segment of how he feels about being asked to intervene into the water charges issue. He said, "What is really bringing the Gardaí into disrepute is not the water charge protests, but the government that is using us against them. As a Garda, I am to prevent protesting the installation of water meters, but as a worker, I'm not paying when the bills drop in April. On Garda Síochána is paying a heavy price for their role in the introduction of the water tax. We're losing credibility with the ordinary man and woman. Successive governments have long since willed the Gardai of our country to be protectors of corporate Ireland and their vested interests at the expense of workers." So, Taoiseach, my question is, isn't that Garda right? Aren't the Gardai and the courts being used to defend corporate interests and the establishment, as we're now seeing in the anti-water charges protests and as we've seen before with the Greyhound workers, with the Thomas Cook workers, Rossport and many other situations? And what else could you call the current policing of communities who are protesting water meter installation,
way over time. Thank you.
Which don't benefit them and only benefit companies, the likes of which are owned by the richest man in Ireland, Denis O'Brien?
I reject your charge that the Gardaí are operating on the basis of political direction. That's outrageous, Deputy Coppinger. The Garda Síochána operate on the basis of the Commissioner who runs the day-to-day operations of the Gardaí. They do not operate in this context to any mandate from any government, and obviously can't do that. I would say to you that you mentioned about the water charges protests in the Anti-Austerity Alliance. I'm not sure whether you think it's appropriate that somebody should be not allowed to get out of a car for over 2 hours and not move. You mentioned protests that have gone on over many years down in Rostuach. I don't know whether you're ever down there or not. Most of those who were protesting were certainly not from the vicinity or from the locality or indeed from the region, and in many cases from the country. So it's to say that the Gardaí are operating in a political fashion here is completely without base. It's false. It's not true, and you know better. I don't know what Garda you're talking to or what Garda has written to you, and obviously if you want to publish his letter, we'd be happy to see what the Garda has to say. I find it strange, though, that that workers who go about their legitimate business in installing water meters, which are a measure of being able to reduce water consumption and therefore beat the cap, are being told within 30 minutes by some of the anti-austerity alliance people who they are, where they live, and that they should be very careful. I find that quite sinister, Deputy.
Taoiseach, just to let you know, there's about 350 groups protesting the water charges. They're not all under the auspices of the anti-austerity alliance, and I completely reject just what you said there. There's an ongoing commentary in the media and by sections of the establishment to say that the protest in Jobstown went beyond the pale. Maybe because it was a female Taoiseach, maybe because the delay was for 2 hours. But can I put it to you, is it not understandable that protests now are of a different character to what they were before, because of what people have endured for 6 long years in this country? Is that not actually understandable to you? Particularly in communities like West Talla.
Sorry,
where,
put a question. This is question time.
As a teacher who worked in that area for 11 years, I can tell you, particularly the cuts emanating from that minister would have hit people's child benefit, their lone parents' allowance, their rent supplement, and a whole host of other things. And that might explain why people are so angry and are...
Sorry, Deputy, would you please put your question?
Can I put it to you as well, Taoiseach?
No, sorry, would you mind your own business for a minute, please, and let the Deputy finish? Thank you.
Okay. And can I put it to you, Taoiseach, you might actually look at Garda resources being deployed into parts of Mayo. For example,
no, sorry, Deputy.
$1 million...
And you were over.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to have a minute. There's no way I had a minute.
No, don't be giving me that stuff. Put your supplementary question. Thank you.
Taoiseach,
sorry, would you please? I'll handle this if you let me see.
A million people watched women being assaulted in Aris of Tróchta several months ago on RTE, and a lot of people are asking why
don't put your supplementary question.
Why no arrests have been made. That is a supplementary, Count Corla. Why no arrests have been made in that case. And just in relation to why the...
Deputy, would you please put your supplementary question? I won't ask you a third time.
Sorry, I am being interrupted continually.
You're over time.
My question, and I'm putting my supplementary question.
Please. I'm trying to hold a bit of order here. If you just give me a chance.
Well, stop interrupting me then, and I
will interrupt you if you're over your time. Would you please put a supplementary question?
Okay, Taoiseach, the reason that the Gardai who wrote to me, and I can pass on his letter to you...
that's not a question, Deputy.
Sorry, the Taoiseach asked if I knew the Gardai.
I don't care what the Taoiseach asked you. You have 1 minute for a supplementary question, and you're now 2 minutes and 40 seconds to be exact.
Because I was continuing.
No, would you please put your supplementary question?
Am I allowed to put a question about policing and what the Taoiseach said?
Well, put the question.
That's what I'm doing. Unbelievable.
Deputy, you'll just have to learn to obey the rules like everybody else in this House. You cannot go on and on and on. Please put your question.
That is ridiculous. Let's time the previous speakers.
Sorry, Deputy, would you please allow her to put a supplementary question?
The point that the Garda made in the letter is that they're being asked to go into civil protests in the heart of communities to act on behalf of the government in the implementation of the water charges and on companies in the implementation of the water meters. And a lot of them are not happy with that. So far from you defending the Gardai last week, what you were doing was defending government policy and your use of the Gardai, Taoiseach, and isn't that the case?
Well, that's a series of comments rather than a question. I might say to you that the remark you make about women being assaulted in Aris of Tróchta and Garda resources in County Mayo, that's a serious case that's being investigated. You seem to know that nobody has been arrested. I can't comment on that. Obviously, it's a Garda matter, and there are investigations going on from within the HSE. That should never have happened. I'd make the point that when I attended in Dublin here myself at an opening of a geriatric unit, the people who were involved in the protest about the water had no interest in the people who were in the geriatric unit. Their intention seemed to be to knock Gardai and kick them on the ground. That seemed to be the intention of those people who were protesting for some reason. I'm sure you don't support that.
Thank you.
I'm sure you don't support that. For that reason, I reject what you say of the Gardaí operating in a political fashion here. They have a job to do that's very difficult, and it's not being helped by some of the clients that I see on the streets. It might be far more in their interest if they looked around the country and see the many places that have inferior water, that have no facilities in terms of being able to do business in the way one would expect, that we cannot deal with those challenges unless we have a system of investing to fix and investing for the future. And all those people could help in their own small way. After all, the man who approached me with 2 pints in his hands, complaining about the charge, I remind him that 1 pint would pay for his water as a single person for a couple of weeks.
That completes questions.